Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This week is World Autism Awareness Week. And funny enough, the day that I am recording this, April 2nd, is World Autism Awareness Day. This is near and dear to my heart because in 2019, I was diagnosed with autism, specifically high-functioning autism, specifically Asperger's. When I was diagnosed, my entire life made sense. All my nuances, quirks, social awkwardness, like holy crap, but especially my mind finally made sense. I even told my mom when we heard the official diagnosis, Mom, I feel like I finally have the keys to the kingdom of me. However, unfortunately, many see an autism diagnosis as a pity or hindrance, or in extreme cases, a sentence to life in hell. And of course, there are children on the extreme end of the autism spectrum. That is a debilitating aspect of the disorder. But there are also kids like me that can function in the real world, but we have our limits. Like, for example, I really don't like a loud room. I cannot stand the sound of plates being put away. I literally, we have plates in my house and I can't stand, I literally cringe at the sound of putting them back. I have to very quietly put the plates back. I don't know why. It literally goes from the kind of lighting that I don't like to literally the sound of somebody's voice. But we also have superpowers. Some with autism have a photographic memory. Some can build a computer from scratch. Some are literal geniuses, and others are just simply a ray of sunshine and are always happy. For example, me, I'm constantly happy. I'm actually told I'm too dang happy. And my superpower that my mom has used and many of my other friends have used is I am a people monitor. I literally can tell if somebody is wrong by just being around them. But then that goes into I can't see it, but I have a sense of feeling the color of their aura. I can literally feel it. I don't know how to explain it. It's very, very unique. Anyway, hence why a common phrase in the autism world is if you've met one person with autism, congratulations. You've met or know one person with autism. One size does not fit us all. The history of autism is pretty well known, and the men who discovered and characterized autism, Leo Kanner and Hans Asperger's, are synonyms to the history of autism. But what if I told you 20 years before these men characterized the diagnosis of autism, it was a woman? When I found this out, I lost my mind. That woman is Grunya Efimovna Sukhareva. Let's get started. Oh, before we move on, isn't my shirt cute? Autism, seeing the world differently. That is an understatement. Grunya Efimovna Sukhareva was born on November 11th, 1891 in Kiev, then part of the Russian Empire, to somebody and somebody.
Hyam Fatelevich and Rakila Iosifovna Sukharev.
What?
Hyam Fatelevich and Rakila Iosifovna Sukharev.
Those people. I could find literally nothing about her childhood except for this really cute picture with her and her sister Maria. That's all I know about them. So, jumping ahead, she graduated from the Kiev Medical Institute in 1915 with her medical degree. She stayed at the institute and worked in its epidemiology unit for the next 2 years, where she then found a job as a licensed psychiatrist at the Kiev Psychiatric Hospital from 1917 to 1921. During her time here in 1919, she was appointed head of the defectology department at the Institute of Mental Health of Children and Adolescents. When she finished her time at the institute in 1921, she moved to Moscow in the newly established USSR and was employed at the psychoneurological department for children, and while she was there, she established a school for children affected by intellectual disabilities. Grunya called it a hospital school titled the Psychoneurological and Pedagogical Sanatorium School of the Institute of Physical Training and Medical Pedology. God, Grunya was the supervisor of all that. What made this school so unique was that it took a different approach. Students were kids with no family or even a shelter. This was due to the horror and destruction of World War I, which ended not too long ago, because, that was super fun. Due to this, the school became a safe haven for these children affected by World War I. In 1924, a 12-year-old boy came to the sanatorium for an evaluation, and he was clearly different than his peers. This part, boy, do I relate 100% to this boy. People didn't interest him, and he preferred the company of adults rather than kids his own age. That was me all growing up. Could not stand the kids my age. Really loved hanging out with adults. Weird, I don't know why. Well, no, I know why, because adults thought like how I thought. This boy never played with toys, taught himself how to read by the time he was 5, and spent all his time reading anything and everything he could get his hands on. This boy was thin, he slouched, moved slowly and kinda awkwardly, and suffered from anxiety and frequent stomach aches. Grunya took him on, and this started her groundbreaking research. She observed this boy with a keen eye and noted that he was highly intelligent and liked to have philosophical discussions. Oh my God. When I was researching this, the amount of times I was like, that's me, was insane. She described him as, quote, an introverted type with an autistic prolactivity into himself, end quote. At this time, autistic was a newish term in psychiatry. About a decade earlier, Eugene Buehler, a Swiss psychiatrist and scholar, coined the term autistic along with schizoid and schizophrenia. Eugene used the term autistic to describe the social withdrawal and detachment from reality often seen with schizophrenia in children. When it comes to Grunya, at first she used the term schizoid psychopathy, but later changed it to autistic psychopathy in the same way Eugene did. But as she began to see more children with these traits, she decided to characterize it more fully. She started a comprehensive clinical study with 5 more boys between 2 and 14 years old over the next year with similar, as she described, autistic tendencies as the first boy did. The other boys also showed that they preferred to be in their own inner world, yet each had their own talents and quirks. Again, relatable, me. For example, one had an amazing memory for numbers, but couldn't recognize faces. Another was extraordinarily gifted with the violin, and another had imaginary friends that lived in the fireplace. Sorry, I laugh at that because I had imaginary friends that lived in weird places too. She found that none of the boys were popular with their peers, and some saw interactions with their peers as useless. Again, I relate to that so much. Relatable. One boy said, quote, and I love this, I need this on a t-shirt, "They are too loud. They hinder my thinking," end quote. Even when nobody talks, I can't hear myself think. It's weird. Well, no, it's not weird. It's autism. Grunya published her first paper in 1925 titled Schizoid Psychopathies in Childhood. Thus, she became the first in history to publish autistic traits in children at the amount of extraordinary detail as her paper did. Her paper focused on the incredible talents and intellectual gifts in the children. Of one boy, she said, quote, "He is also an able artist, and the drawing teacher, himself an artist, assessed him as artistically highly gifted," end quote. She described the talents and quirks of another boy, quote, "He is deeply emotional and very attached to his sister. If a letter from her sister arrives, he will hide in a corner to read it on his own, rather than in the presence of witnesses, waiting patiently until he is left alone. Truthful and pedantic, he always takes a principled viewpoint. He has deep feelings for the beauties of nature. He is musically gifted, has a good ear, a rich musical memory," end quote. In an overall summary in a section titled An Autistic Attitude, I need that on a t-shirt again. She said, quote, "All affected children keep themselves apart from their peers, find it hard to adapt to, and are never fully themselves among other children. All these children manifest a tendency towards solitude and avoidance of other people from early childhood onwards. They keep themselves apart, avoid communal games." End quote. Again, the relatedness of me as a child to this it just made so much sense. She expanded her discoveries in 1927 with her publication on the manifestation of autism pathology in young girls. Now, this is very interesting because today, statistically in the US, there are 4 in 100 boys with autism compared to about 1 in 100 girls. Meaning boys are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism than girls. Why? Well, one reason could be that the criteria for autism diagnosis is biased, which, I mean, what's new there? And that the presentation of the disorder is based on its appearance in boys. Plus, girls mask their symptoms better, whereas boys show their symptoms more intensely and noticeably. When it comes to the science part, girls with autism have more mutations of the condition than boys. These mutations are called microglia, which is a cell in the central nervous system and mainly regulates brain development, injury repair, and maintenance of the neural networks. Plus, boys seem to inherit their mutations more from an unaffected mother than an unaffected father. And those combined suggest that girls need a bigger genetic hit than boys to have autism. So, AKA, girls don't fit the autistic model. Grunya's paper and research on autism and the differences in sexes, titled "The Particular Features of Schizoid Psychopathies in Girls," that was published in 1927 in the roughly translated German journal, Monthly Magazine for Psychiatry and Neurology, which was the same journal her first paper was published in 1926. And this paper was essentially a sequel to her first paper. In this new study, she studied 5 girls with autistic symptoms, and she found that unlike Asperger and some guy named Van Cleveland, I could not find who he was, and most prominent psychiatrists in the 20th century maintained that autism occurred exclusively in males. Asperger, for instance, attributed autistic symptoms in girls to poncephalitic conditions. Poncephalitic means after a result of encephalitis or inflammation of the brain. AKA, the girl needs to have an inflamed, messed up brain in order to get autism. In her paper, Grunya argued that often, quote, "people who have recovered from encephalitis and have motor skill disorders, for example, display no autistic disposition," end quote. Grunya knew the differences in autism in girls almost a century ago and was a pioneer in the research. She even said in her opening paragraph that she wanted her research to be seen as a start and continuation to understand autism in girls more. So why did her research on autism and the differences of autism in girls I'll say that again, not be cited or even given credit in Asperger's and Kaner's papers? Simple. Grunya had a more empatheticness to autism, whereas Kaner and Asperger didn't. Especially Asperger. Let me explain why. And this made me mad. I knew Asperger's was a bit on the I don't like you side. I really have a new profound hate for Asperger's after doing a little bit more of an in-depth look into him. Listen to this. Both men proposed that autism developed due to refrigerator mothers, meaning that cold and unemotional and or uncaring mothers were to blame for their child underdevelopment. Well, pot meat kettle, because during the Holocaust, Asperger became a doctor and initiated thousands of children into the Am Spiegeldren clinic in Vienna, where, under the Third Reich, imprisoned those children, and Hans here would later do examinations and experiments to see if these children could integrate into Volk, which was the national community of Nazi Germany, and he found that if they couldn't be or were unfit to be integrated, those children, specifically 789, were eventually murdered by way of child euthanasia. And there is zero question in my mind that some of those children had autism. No freaking doubt about it. Why do I mention only children when it comes to all this? Because the clinic, if you even want to call it that, was specifically a children's clinic. But yeah, let's give Hansi here all the credit for discovering autism. You know what? To make us all feel better, I'm going to play that scene in Frozen where Anna punches Hans in the face, and I'm just going to put his face on it so we can all imagine us punching him in the face. Enjoy.
But she froze your heart.
The only frozen heart around here is yours.
To Leo Kanner's credit, he was a good guy with misogynistic thoughts. I mean, he was the one that came up with the phrase refrigerator mother, but you know, what man didn't have misogynistic thoughts in the 50s? And B, he did publish the first standardized description of early childhood autism, saying that it was a more neurodevelopmental disorder and called for more research. So he gets a pass on that one. But regardless, both men didn't mention Grunya in their papers, and it's actually not known if they even knew her original discovery of autism existed. However, given the limited number of psychiatry journals at the time, it is possible that Hans read Grunya's paper when it was translated into German in 1926 and just simply chose to not cite it and therefore taken all the credit. Also, to take into account, and I kind of believe this a little bit more, Hans liked Nazi stuff, remember? And Grunya was Jewish. Others say that Asperger may not have been given permission or felt like he was able to credit Grunya, but personally, and I think that this is the fact, you know, since he was a Nazi and Grunya was a Jew, he was not going to let a Jew have all the credit for discovering his discovery. I'm going with that thought. In 1928, Grunya worked as an associate professor at Moscow's First Medical Institute. From 1933 to 1935, she became lead of the Department of Psychiatry at the now Kharkiv University, and it was during the 1930s that she developed what is basically an evolving biological concept of mental disorders, giving an explanation of essential elements of mental illness in adolescence and childhood, aka what is now known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. In her study of schizophrenic pathology, because why not do that, found that in defining the defect, the concept overlaps with similar terms like negative symptoms and residual states, thus making defining the defect of schizophrenia difficult. In her work with epilepsy, because why not, Grunya gave a diagnostic criteria and accounts describing violent night terrors, sleepwalking, hallucinations, and other related symptoms that we know of today. Oh, she also did a butt ton of research on mental trauma and pathologies of physical and mental illnesses on children with viral diseases, congenital syphilis, rheumatism, and other injuries sustained by children from war, aka now known as PTSD. She did studies in schizophrenia and basically made a blueprint of how to diagnose that. Did a map out of what can cause epilepsy and essentially found how PTS works in children. Because of course she did. Grunya also was a pioneer in using the method of suggestion. suggested that some factors of a personality disorder could be due to a poor family environment and societal structure. For a personality disorder to show in a child or teenager, there needs to be a significant social factor, and fought for children's rights, saying that they should not be sent to prison, but to a medical institution. She basically also pioneered the founding of bipolar disorder with what I just said, and also was against juvie. Like, we like her a lot. I'm just saying, I love this person. In 1935, she founded the Faculty of Pediatric Psychiatry in the Central Institute of Postgraduate Medical Education, where she was head of the department till 1965. In 1938, she led a childhood psychosis clinic under the Russian SFSR Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and until 1969, she was a counselor and leader at the Psychiatric Hospital of Kishenko in Moscow. In 2015, the Moscow Department of Health renamed the center with the prefix G.E. Sukhareva on the front of the building in honor of her work there. It has since become the leading specialized medical institution for the treatment of suicidal thoughts in children and teenagers under the age of 18, which I know Grunya would have a huge smile on her face knowing that. Grunya's love and tenacity for psychiatric research and development had her publish over 150 scientific papers, 6 textbooks, and a 3-volume collection, all within her lifetime. She was awarded the Order of Lenin, Order of the Badge of Honor, and the awesome title of Honorable Scientist of the RSFSR. Grunya Efimovna Sukhareva died on April 26, 1981, after battling a long unknown illness at the age of 90. She is buried alongside her parents and sister Maria, who became a pediatric doctor specializing in infectious diseases, at the Voskreakovskoye Jewish Cemetery in Moscow. Though Grunya is criminally unknown, her pioneering work on differentiating between autism spectrum disorder and schizophrenia nearly 30 years before the establishment of the DSM-3 in 1980, now the DSM-5, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. In 1996, Sula Wolf translated her paper on autism into English, and Grunya's discovery and research of autism is finally credited by scholars in the newest publication of the DSM-5. Her early pioneering research on autism in girls now gives more insight into the disorder in girls, which to this day is still grossly underdiagnosed. There you freaking go! You know who actually discovered autism spectrum disorder. When I found out that it was a woman, I lost my freaking mind. Oh, and I don't care what you say. I don't care if you say, he might have not been able to put her name into it. No, Asperger was just a Nazi jerkwad that didn't want a Jewish person to take freaking credit for the diagnosis of autism that he felt that he deserved. Okay, let's just be real here. Enough about him. If you learned something today, and I surely hope you did, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And while you're down there, please leave a friendly comment and tell me any kind of story you have with a person with autism. Personally, I love that I know I have autism. So much of how my brain works makes so much sense. Wow. Again, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. We are truly a horse of a different color. I will be back next week with another video, but until then, don't be well behaved. You just might make herstory. See you next time, guys. Happy World Autism Awareness Week.